We are back inside City Hall, and my next two guests claim that the city's Department of Education is not living up to a promise that it made to hundreds of teachers who left the Caribbean to work in public schools starting nearly a decade ago. They say those teachers were promised green cards for working in the city, but instead have been left battling mountains of red tape for years, and most of them are still without green cards. Here to talk more about the issue is Judith Hall. She heads the Association of International Educators and also teaches at Marie Curie High School in the Bronx. Also with us, Bertha Lewis from the Black Institute, a newly formed advocacy organization and think tank. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ms. Hall, let me start with you. You and hundreds of other teachers were going about your business in Guyana, Jamaica, and all kinds of places. How did you hear about the opportunity here?
There was an ad posted in the Daily Gleaner, and they ran the ad for 3 days, and they had interviews for 3 days at the University of the West Indies in Jamaica. And they were recruiting teachers to come here in the understaffed schools in New York City.
Okay, and this was a while ago, because right now we don't hear about too much of a teacher shortage these days.
No, a considerable while ago.
Yes, okay.
This was in 2001.
And you took the opportunity in part because they said they would help you get permanent papers so that you could stay here.
Yeah, initially we came on a J1 visa, which has a 2-year residency requirement that you have to go back to your country and work there before you're eligible to work in the New York City public school system again. But at the end of that time, the Department of Education held a big meeting and introduced lawyers to us because they indicated they were interested in keeping us. Because most people understood that they would only be working for 2 years. And we were resigned to that. But then 2 years later, you come and you say, okay, here's an opportunity for you to stay. We still need you, so please stay with us. And they opened up a path to permanent residency.
Okay, and according to the report your organization put out, Bertha Lewis, something went wrong after that.
Well, something did not go right. We believe that the Department of Education, at that time, the chancellor was Joel Klein, really neglected these teachers. They were assigned to some of the lowest income areas, and they turned things around. They went to the Caribbean and got the best and the brightest. And so it is 10 years later. Not only do they not have their green cards, but they've been classified as unskilled laborers. And also, they are under the thumb of principals who must write a letter, not just evaluate them, but 4 words must be in this letter, recommended for extension of visa. No principal should be writing anything to have to do with someone's immigration status, and if you want to evaluate, fine. The other thing is teachers have been dismissed with no due process. They are unprotected because of their immigration status. And we just think it's time that the Department of Education live up to its promises, really deal with these teachers. And since we're in an atmosphere right now where teachers are being targeted, this group is the most vulnerable group, and we think that this group, unless their story gets out, is going to be the first ones to go.
There are teachers that you know of that have been recruited here and who ended up just on the say-so of a principal?
Oh, absolutely.
Losing their right to stay here.
Dozens of teachers. There are teachers here right now undocumented. You were recruited to come teach. They came and found professionals, and you brought professionals over here. And because you were so tardy in taking care of their immigration status and giving them that path to permanent residence that you promised, people are living on other people's couches.
Wow.
There's a lady whose husband died, and she was informed by the lawyers contracted by the DOE that when your husband died, the status died with him.
The husband was the teacher?
Yeah. The husband was the teacher.
And the husband died, and he had brought family members over. And then,
Absolutely.
So then the wife is in what status?
She's out of status.
She's out of status. But then, after 10 years, what do you go back to? When somebody promised you that they were going to make this right for you and so you could live and work, and you took up the opportunity to do that. Some people went back home and said, okay, I like it here in America, which is your right because you didn't come under a fence, you didn't climb over a wall. Sure. And so it is within your right to say this is where I want to remain because it was offered to you. So they went back home and sold their houses and disposed of property.
Wow.
And now they're here. And of the 700-something teachers recruited from all over the Caribbean, only about 150, fewer than that, have received green cards to date.
Wow. Let me give a response. The Department of Education did give us a response. They've read your report, and they say as follows: we remain committed to working to secure permanent residency for the international teachers we recruited to teach in our city's schools. You've, Bertha Lewis, been meeting with the last chancellor, the incoming chancellor. You've told them this whole story.
Yes.
What's the next step?
Well, I remain cautiously optimistic. We know that most of this occurred under Joel Klein's watch, but we do know that our new incoming chancellor, Dennis Walcott, is very familiar with this. They said they would work with us. In fact, today we're looking forward to a response back from them because it was 2 weeks ago today. But also what's more important, we're going to keep up the pressure and the fight because this is not sort of like a immigration reform issue. The things that we're asking for, the city of New York can do to mitigate the circumstances under which these teachers are laboring.
What are some of the things the city could do?
One, they could, in fact, get rid of asking principals to write down extension of visa letters. Principals should do what they do. Evaluate the teachers on their work. The Department of Education is the employer. The Department of Education should be the one that makes a recommendation about the visa. Two, you could reinstate teachers that have been dismissed without benefit of due process whatsoever. Every other teacher gets the benefit of due process. It's called 3020A, state by state law. These teachers do not. You could also make sure that their classification is changed to what we call EB2. That's a professional, like a nurse, because that way, that would help them along in that process. You could lobby and work with our Congress people to put these ones that were recruited in 2001 in one class, say we recruited them, we bungled it because the unit of international teacher recruitment and support doesn't do any of that. Overhaul that unit, make sure it works properly. Those are the things that can be done right now that would greatly improve their situation.
Ms. Hall, one thing we learned while getting ready to sit down and talk with you folks is that one thing that the Department of Education could say, I think they believe this, is that some of the teachers went out and got their own attorneys to try and handle this somewhat complicated immigration status question, and that ended up backfiring on them. What's your
Well, I'd say that 90% of the teachers went with the DOE suggested lawyers. So if there was a small percentile who went with their own lawyers, it's not enough to make a federal case out of that one, because most of us are with.
That's not quite accurate. Also, we have the DOE, which we're paying with our taxpayer dollars. These lawyers, one law firm, we don't think it was competitively bid. These lawyers are in Virginia. You can't walk into your lawyer's office to see them. After 3, 4, 5 years.
Wait, they couldn't find a good immigration lawyer in New York?
This is what the Department of Education said. We couldn't find a law firm that was qualified, and so they had to go to Virginia. However, the unit, again, the International Teacher Unit should have been on top of this. Some people, a very small percentage, got their own lawyers after 5 years.
Let me ask you a due process question. Are teachers in your status, are you members of the union? Does the union step up and try to represent you?
Yes, as a matter of fact, before we never had much success with lobbying the union. But since Michael Mulgrew has been president, he's been really trying to work since he's heard about it.
You're dues-paying members of the union, right?
Yes, we are.
Okay, so presumably they would give you as much of a fight as they would for any other teacher.
Right.
Who was.
But unfortunately, you have the immigration status, which really makes these teachers more vulnerable.
Okay. Listen, thanks for explaining all of this to us. There's a new chancellor. He's only been on the job for a day or two, so I'm sure he'll need a chance to look at it. But thank you so much for bringing this to our attention. Very important issue.
Well,
and separately, we're going to have to talk to you about what you've been doing since those acorn days. We'll talk about that another time.
That's right.
Thanks a lot. Thank you, Ms. Hall.
It's
time for a break. Still to come, 3 comedians will be joining us to give us their take on the near shutdown of the federal government and also tell us how they'll be performing for a good cause later this week. Stay with us.